Hey guys, so we've been told our whole lives not to judge a book by its cover. One of my favorite lines in Legally Blonde is actually when they're in the jail and Elle and Emmett are talking, and Emmett is getting kind of sassed at by Elle about his scruffy vibe and that he needs to dress up and look the part. And Emmett says, Elle, didn't your mother ever tell you not to judge a book by its cover? And she says, she did, but she also told me that books with the raggedy covers stay up on the shelves. And like I said, we know not to judge a book by its cover. We know that. We've been taught that our whole lives. As words are difficult. As authors, as writers, as readers, we know not to judge a book by its cover. However, we do it all the time. Whether it's people, whether it's a place, like you don't go up to a building with windows boarded up and everything looking derelict and think that's a swanky, high-end nightclub in there, you know. It looks abandoned, and if we're going in, we're looking for ghosts, most likely. And it's the same with books. If I had walked into a Barnes & Noble or a Books A Million or an Ollie's or any other bookstore and I saw this book on the shelf, I wouldn't have picked it up. I would have left it right where it was. I wouldn't have even bothered to pick it up and read the back of it. And I would have bypassed it and gone on to something else, and I would have missed a really great book. And I am so glad that I ended up getting this book. So you might be asking, okay, well, if you wouldn't buy this book, then how did you come to buy this book? Well, that's an excellent question. So how I choose these books is when I decided to do this channel, I knew that the reason I wanted to do this channel was to highlight authors, the self-published authors and the indie authors who didn't really get a whole lot of attention on their books. And I didn't want to be restricted to just what I would normally gravitate to. So what I decided to do was, when I was on Threads, I put a post out saying, hey, indie authors, self-published authors, drop a link to your book. And then after a while, I turned the comments on that off after 300 plus people had added their links. And then I just took all of those names, put it on a wheel of names on the internet, and I let the wheel decide which ones I bought, regardless of what the genre was, because like I've said before, I like any genre, I'll read any genre, but it also introduced me to a lot of books like I probably wouldn't have picked up. Like I said, I wouldn't have picked this book up. I probably wouldn't have picked up a lot of the books. Half the books that I've read, I probably wouldn't have picked up just on the cover alone, just because it didn't have my kind of vibe to it. But I've enjoyed most of the books that I've read, you know. So and then I have use the random wheel again of all the books that I have. Okay, I have these books, which one do I read next? And that's how I decide which one to read next. I was not looking forward to reading this book, and then when the wheel finally pulled it up and said, you're reading this one next, I was like, okay, fine. And that's when I finally read the book in the back. Once upon a time, in a forgotten corner of a forgotten isle, grew a dark forest which housed an even darker demon who cannot be named. For years, local village have blamed the dark forest for their hardships, but Maeva knows the true enemy lies across the sea in Ravensland, the neighboring island which has colonized their own for centuries. When blight sweeps over the isle, crops are decimated and a devastating famine ensues, yet the Ravenish still demand their tithes from the starving. Unable to pay the rent, Maeva's cottage is burnt down. Having lost her family, her home, and perhaps her sanity, She has nothing left to lose. On the brink of death, she stumbles into the dark forest, willing to give anything to survive, even her life. There she strikes a deal with a shadow-dwelling demon, which will change her life quite literally forever. Follow Maeva as she discovers her newfound existence comes with hunger for change and an appetite for retribution, which cannot easily be sated. When I read that, I immediately knew that this was a story that was a kind of a fantasy retelling of the Irish potato famine. And I am obsessed with Ireland and Irish culture, and I even took Gaeilge for a while to learn the language because I intended to go to Ireland. I had a group of friends, we got our passports, we got our carry-ons, and we got our luggage. We made a itinerary. We're like, okay, this is what we want to see, this is where we want to go, and we were planning on going, and we were ready to buy our tickets, and we thought, okay, April or May would be the best time to buy the tickets. Well, May hit, and that's when we were thinking, okay, we're going to go ahead and buy our tickets, because we were going to go in September, and we had heard that it's best to buy your tickets well in advance. So we're like, okay, September tickets, we'll buy them in May. Care to guess what year that was? It was 2020. Nobody went anywhere for a while. And even though we dared to hope that maybe by September 2020 things would be better, they just weren't. So I have yet to get to Ireland. I will get there one day, I'm sure. But when I realized what the book was a fantasy parallel of, I couldn't wait to get into it. And then I got into it and I absolutely loved it. Maeva, no matter how hungry she gets, no matter how bad things get, she's just got this spunky attitude. She's just so full of wit and humor and just sarcasm. And even when she's faced with this shadow demon, everybody is afraid of this guy. And she sees him and she's like, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Like, I didn't call for you. And he assures her that she did call for him. And she's just real snarky with him. And he's like, most people are afraid of me. And she's like, I've never been afraid of you. She says, I've dreamed about you my whole life. There's nothing scary about you. And he's like, well, it's common for kids to have nightmares. And she's like, no, not nightmares, dreams. Nightmares are scary. You've never been scary. And it's kind of funny how you see there's a familial stubbornness at she's really, really stubborn, and she does not like being told what to do. And anytime somebody tells her, hey, you're gonna do this, she's like, yeah, but I'm not, so do with that what you will. And she's so spunky, and so no matter how good things are, no matter how bad things are, she does not lose that sense of humor and that spunk. And she doesn't care who she's talking to. She can be talking to the most common man begging for food, or she can be talking to a king, and she's going to be as snarky and sarcastic with either one of them as if they're equals. She does not care who you are. You are not important enough to worry about being all humble and everything. She's been through enough. She's had enough. She is over it. And I love her personality so much. At one point, she's talking to a priest who, one of her brothers, calls her incredibly patriotic, and I see where he gets that, because she's so tied to the island, her island home, and she's so bitter about everything that Ravensland has done to her and her people, how they have basically decimated them, and they don't care. It doesn't matter what they're going through. The Ravensland could care less about anybody on the island, and she points out, you couldn't care less about us, except we're the ones providing you this crop. Even when it was in plenty. You need us, and now when we're destitute, you won't take care of us. You brought this on to us. Fix your mistake. And of course they won't. And so she's very bitter about the Raven's Land, as she should be. And she's talking to one priest who is trying to convince her that the best way to survive is to join the Ravenish culture. And the Ravenish culture has different gods, a different language, different names. So, like her friend, he was an altar boy, and when he was an altar boy, his name was Peter. And when he became a priest, they changed his name to Peter. And she is very salty about that, and he's like, it costs nothing to be kind and to just survive. And she says, when he's trying to offer her soup that he has gotten from Ravensland, and she says, that soup's not free. He says, it's just free soup, just between friends. And she says, no, it's not free soup. It cost you your religion. It cost you your name. It cost you your language. And in the same way that the English tried to wipe out the Irish language, the Ravenish is trying to wipe out their language and calling it primitive and rudimentary. And they're like, no, it's just different than the language you have. That's all it is. It's just a different language. There's nothing wrong with it. And people, they outlawed the language in the same way that the English outlawed the Irish language for a time, and the people kept teaching it to their children in secret, and they spoke it in secret because they weren't willing to live without their language. And as somebody once said about the Irish language, a country without its language is a country without its soul. And so she's very protective of all that. She's like, this is who we are. This is me. I am not going to give up my faith. I am not going to give up my name, and I'm not going to give up my language. And she does end up giving up her faith to a point that by the time she is ready to walk into the forest, she doesn't believe there's anything there watching out for her. She doesn't believe in the old gods. She certainly doesn't believe in the new gods, is what the Ravenish gods are. She doesn't believe in demons. She doesn't go into the forest in the first place to look for the demon. She just is looking for food. That's how bad things have gotten. And there's one point where I resonated with her so much because there's just nothing. It's winter is starting to release its hold. Spring is trying very hard to come in, but it's a cold, wet climate. And so she's foraging, and there's just not a whole lot to forage for. There's not a whole lot growing in the island at all. But she hears about some berries off of the cliffs, and at first she thinks they're nightshades, so she's not really willing to eat them. She gathers them just in case, but then she's looking at them and she's like, they look like nightshades, which are poisonous. And she's like, I'm not ready to quite give up yet, so I don't know that I'm willing to eat them. And she gets a visitor, and they point out, oh no, those aren't nightshade, those are pokeberries, or soul berries. He says, they'll keep you alive, but you gotta get past the taste first. And she eats them, and they're very bitter. And but at one point she's sitting there, and she's hungry, and she's just laying in the grass, just feeling the grass on her and feeling the sun beat down on her, and she's just kind of existing, just letting herself exist for a minute. And she's on that cusp of, is this where I give up? or do I keep on pushing? And because it's Maeva, she doesn't have a give up attitude. She doesn't have a just say die attitude. She can't give up for anything. It doesn't matter what it is. She could be on the brink of starvation and death, and she will go down fighting. And that's why she goes into the forest. She figures nobody else is going in there. There's probably something growing in there that I can eat. You know? So I like that. And then also the thing that really hooked me about this book, like I said, I took a little bit of Gaeilge to learn the language before we went over there, and I love the Irish language so much because it's so deep and so resonant. To say when we want to apologize to someone, we say, I'm sorry. In Ireland, it's tabron orm, which means sorrow is upon me, or the sadness is upon me. And it's a very different, a deeper meaning of apology than just I'm sorry. Because if I say something that hurts my friend's feelings and I say I'm sorry, then all it comes down to is, well, I'm sorry I offended you. But to say tabron orm, the sadness is upon me, then it's not just I'm sorry I offended you. I am hurt that I hurt you. I am upset that I hurt you. Like, I have remorse for hurting you. And in Ireland, they would say ledahel, which is please. For us, hand me the salt, please. It's a request. It's plain and simple a request. But when you say ledahel literally translates to with your will. And it's a deeper request of, if you are willing, will you pass me the salt? And you're getting them to pass you the salt. You're asking them to pass you the salt, not because a request has been made, not because they have some kind of obligation to do so, but because they are willing to provide you with the salt that is out of your reach. And I love this whole, I have a hard time with thank you. Anyone who speaks Gaeilge, please don't come for me if I butcher this, but Goramagat probably said it wrong. I struggled with that one. I struggled with so much, but basically it means good go before you. And basically if you do something for me and I say thank you, say you bring me some soup and I say thank you, I'm literally just thanking you for the soup. But to use the Irish term that means good go after you or before you, then it's may goodness follow you for your actions. May your goodness be properly rewarded. You know, so I love the Irish language, and they call it the Old Tongue in here, but it is Gaeilge. It is Irish. And I was like the little girl kicking her feet and squealing with delight that I was able to see this language in there. And if you don't speak the language, you don't know the language, don't worry. It's not going to be, it's not going to be too difficult to understand, because anything she says in the Old Tongue, she does translate for you in the book as Maeva is speaking. Maeve is speaking she's telling the story. It's a first-person point of view. And I love that not only did the language get included, but the explanation of what it meant and the translation got included, and it felt very organic, and it felt really part of the story, and I just love so much this book. It almost beat out Rise of the Dragon Witch as my favorite so far. Dragon Witch is still my favorite. Timothy K. Clark has not yet been dethroned as the author of my favorite book this year. But this was so close. It was so very close to being my favorite. I don't know that I'm going to be willing to let this one go just yet. It might stay on my shelf for a little while, next to Dragon Witch and Storm Captain. But, yeah, I really like this one. I would say that one of the reasons I would have avoided this is because my initial thought was that he was a vampire. And I was like, I don't care about vampire romance. They're so overdone. I can't deal with that right now. And then when I read that it was a demon, I was like, oh, okay. And yeah, they're vampires. They're a type of vampire. But they do it's done in a way that is, it feels fresh. It feels new. It doesn't feel like all the other vampires. As a matter of fact, I would say this is better than the entire Twilight series altogether. I would gladly throw the Twilight series away and just have this, honestly. But, yeah. So that's my take on it. I don't rate books on the videos because as T.M. Kirk says, every book is a 5-star read as long as it finds the right reader. This one, definitely a 5-star read for me. But like I said, I don't typically give them ratings because I've enjoyed all of them. Like, there's something enjoyable about all of the stories, except for Kai Flynn. I still wish the dragon had eaten him. But, again, not a middle grade reader. So, I will leave a link in the description for this book, and so you can get your own copy. I do believe it is available on Kindle. And then, of course, as usual, I'll leave a link to my book, How to Change the World When You're 12. But if you're a fantasy reader, if you like the paranormal romance, if you like the vampire romance, this is definitely a good book to get into, and definitely go get it. Especially, I need people to talk to about this, so definitely please go read it and then comment that you read it and we can start a chat about it. But until next time, that's all I got for you right now, so bye.